creative practice in that,
creative
before you
report.
go off to a performance or a recording session, what kind of things you do there, what kind of things you find help, or what kind of things really don't work that you've maybe came across or something like that, or...
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think the moment I started realizing that I really enjoyed improvisation and everything that goes along with it, it was that everything that I do, I guess, in my life period is preparation. All the years I spent practicing piano diligently, the same with guitar and drums, all of that instrumental work, all of the reading, all of the listening to music, all of that is is the preparation. So whenever when I recorded that album with PA, the only decision I made was, all right, I'm gonna bring my drums and all my stuff. That's as far as it kind of went, and then I just showed up with all that stuff, and then just kind of went with it. Because I found I've done a couple gigs where I sort of not necessarily go in with a concept or an approach, but if I think about it too much ahead of time, it muddles my ability to be able to do something in the moment. Which sometimes with improvisation is difficult. Like the most recent gig I did with the drum and electronic stuff, because I hadn't done one for a bit, because I've been doing the Takahashi stuff where we've been doing the tabletop contact mic thing,
Yeah.
and some stuff. So I hadn't done a drum and electronic thing gig for a little bit. We did one with that little festival we did in November, and it was one of the least performances I did had done in a while. And primarily it was I was thinking about it, and I wanted to maybe do certain things. So I had certain things in mind that I wanted to try doing, and then in the context of performing, that it just I sort of went to those things, but without being open to the possibility of other things, which I think is for me the exciting part of improv. I feel a lot of parallels, and if I had another lifetime or another half a lifetime, I think I would pursue maybe like comedy and comedy improv kind of stuff, because I think there's lots of similar things there where you just go into a situation, generally pretty blank of what you want to do, and then react to what's happening or generate, but it's just putting yourself in a position to then do things, which I think also extends, whenever I'm composing, I almost work in a similar way, where if I'll get a rough idea, or I'll have an idea of something that I want to do for a piece, and then when it comes time to actually thinking about it, what I do to think about it is I'll just sit there and I'll kind of just stare, and I basically not improvise, but I get myself in a position where I'm not thinking about anything, and then something will hopefully come, kind of thing, which is not necessarily what happens in improv, because I'm not sitting there when I'm improvising just waiting for something to happen, but it's an openness of I guess nothing, just sitting there and just being prepared and then capable of going where it wants to go, which for me a lot of that stuff that I was talking about with preparation points to that. I think the type of improvisation I do, even if I do tabletop electronics, is all informed by all the instrumental work I did over the years and all that kind of discipline in that, because it gives me the facility, if not immediately technically applicable, it gives me the facility of thought to react and to do things, which may not necessarily be the case if that wasn't true. If I didn't have that, my tabletop stuff would be worse or not as good, because I wouldn't have that ability. And then the same thing with building instruments and all this kind of stuff. It's all the same. I build these things in preparation for practical usage, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that kind of answers where you're going, but I guess that the short answer is that I don't do anything before performances, or as little as possible.
So how, when you say that, then how in control of what's going on do you actually feel then? Because I could the impression could possibly be that you kind of sit there and you just kind of wait for something. You kind of just wait for something. Is that because you're not in control over the kind of the creative process? It just kind of hits you and then you have to respond to it, or is that,
not
am I
really.
reading that wrong?
Because I think in terms of improvisational personality, I'm quite the opposite. I'm not dominant, but I don't like to sit and wait. I hate, well, not hate, but I'm not a big fan of improvisations that kind of like, and they build up and they like. I like to just get into it and just start having a thing. I think more to the point is that I think in order to improvise it, I guess to go places where you haven't been, you have to do things you haven't done. No, I think I messed that up. But basically, if I go in there without having an agenda or without thinking anything, I'm more able or more possible to do something that I hadn't done before. Like in listening, like I was listening to some of the PA album
Mm.
earlier this week, and a lot of the things I did there I've never done before or haven't done since. And I think just being there, that particular situation was weird in the sense that we were in separate rooms and couldn't see each other at all. So we had no visual cues as well, which I guess added to a certain element of not knowing which direction each of us is going and then being surprised by that. Whereas if he was in the same room and I saw him messing with his laptop, I might wait a bit because he's about to do something. Whereas if I couldn't see him doing that, I just went with it. Um,
That's interesting because when you listen to parts of that album, there's a definite kind of sonic dialogue that's occurring between the two parts, and I think it's interesting when you say how it was recorded there, that kind of situation,
yeah,
and how that actually comes across in the
fact
recording.
that I think well, PA, the gig that we had done together that we liked each other's playing that spawned the interest to do the recording. I had done a tabletop stuff at the time. I was finishing up the 2.0 album I was doing. So leading up to that album, I was doing lots of gigs with the type of setup that I was using in order to prepare for that thing. And then I had sort of done that and finished that sort of recording. So I had moved on to start doing to start this sort of drum and electronic kind of improv, which has been the bulk of my focus primarily because it incorporates everything that I like and everything that I do. I'm sitting down, which is always good. I've got my drum stuff. I've got my stringed instruments. I got my sampler. I've got all my DIY electronics. I've got my little melodic, every instrument I kind of like, I have there. And because of the layout and format of the instrument, I can do whatever I want. Whereas if I do a tabletop setup, it's limited. If I'm doing a guitar gig, it's limited. If I do a piano gig, it's limited. With this, it's not unlimited, but it's got the broadest range of things. So I had started shifting to this, but I was still in post production for 2.0, so it hadn't come out yet, but I was already moving on to something else. So when I showed up, he was under the impression that I was going to have my stuff, and he was asking me if I was going to be sampling him or if I had my computer and all that. And I was like, I've got a drum set, a guitar amp, and a bunch of toys.
Yeah.
That's what I got here. So we sort of set that up, and then just started going at it. And it was. I mean, it's one of my favorite things I've ever done in terms of. By the time we finished the session, so it was after I think we recorded maybe 3.5, maybe 4 hours of material. I felt okay about it. Like the last few weren't so great and aren't on the CD, so that kind of, I left feeling all right. There'll be some interesting stuff in there. It wasn't until I left it a few weeks, heard it back, and then picked out the sections that were really good, and then hearing back the things that are happening was really really interesting. Particularly the type of improv it was, being in separate rooms, and then the type of instrumentation, like with him and his laptop setup, which is very hi-fi, and me with drums and the opposite, very lo-fi, and how these two things come together.
Yeah.
Which is nice to hear, I think.
No, that's interesting to hear. So, I'm just thinking about it. It's all right. It's just loads of information there. It's really cool. It's really fun to hear. So with all this material, then, actually, I'm just looking at the time here. We got loads of material here already, so
All right.
there's no need to go anything. So would like as a final kind of bit, could you just let people know if they want to find out more about what you're involved in, or if you've got something you're involved in currently right now that people might be interested in checking out? How could they find that? Or
my webpage is www.rodrigoconstanzo.com. The most current things that I'm working on is that trio with Ray Evanoff and Ian Harrison, which is coming out next month. Where that one is one that I'm really proud of as well, in terms of hearing it sounds like a foreign music I've never heard before. Like it's such a weird combination of the cymbal, saxophone, and strings and electronic that it just they don't really belong together, but it works together and it makes something. So doing that, I'm also doing. I've been slowly building up toward a drum and electronic album, which all of this time and the album with PA as well has been sort of preparing for that. I'm probably going to record some of that maybe midway through this year.
Cool.
Um, and that's about it. I have a compilation I think that might be coming out this year with uh, some drums where it's sort of like an exquisite corpse with different drummers and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting, and some other stuff slated for this year as well.
Cool. Nice.
I'm terrible at ending things. I don't really know how to end things. I just kind of stop.